Hello and welcome back to Biology for Beginners. As always, I'm your host, Morgan. Last week we talked about chromosome behavior and the inheritance of alleles. This week we're just continuing on with that. However, we're not going to be talking about the autosomes. We're going to be talking about the sex chromosomes and sex-linked genes. So let's get into that. As always, right now, our terms and definitions will be popping up so that you can either pause the video and grab the vocabulary we will be using today in our discussion, or you can head on over to my Patreon. The link is down in the description below, and grab the PDF version of my slideshow for absolutely free. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe if you don't want to miss any future Biology for Beginner videos or any of my other environment and conservation outdoor related videos that we put out. So what exactly are sex chromosomes? Well, a sex chromosome is a chromosome that determines if an organism is male or female. Now in humans, we have X and Y chromosomes, and males have an X and a Y, and the sperm is what determines the offspring sex, because the male can pass on either an X or a Y chromosome. Females are going to have two X chromosomes, and therefore eggs can only have an X chromosome. Before we move on, please note that sex and gender are not the same thing, and our understanding of biological sex is changing as of right now in the world of science anyway. However, for an intro-level bio discussion, we don't get into the intricacies of mapping sex and possible biological definitions of it. For our discussion, we're talking chromosomes and the genes carried on them. Now, the X and Y system of sex chromosome inheritance and all that jazz is not the only one we see in nature. In this table here, we see 3 other systems of sex determination. However, they are not the only ones out there. These are just 3. So the first one is the XO system of sex determination. And what that O represents is the absence of a chromosome. So like in the grasshopper, the males have only 1 sex chromosome, just an X, and the females have 2 sex chromosomes. So like in the X and Y system with humans, it's going to be the sperm that determines the sex of the offspring, because the sperm can either have an X chromosome or it can have no sex chromosome. The next system of sex determination we're going to look at is the ZW system, like in the chickens. So they don't even have X and Y chromosomes, they have Z and W chromosomes. And in this particular system, the males have 2 Z chromosomes and the females have a Z and a W chromosome. So whereas in the X and Y system and in the X and O system, the sperm determines the sex of the offspring, in the ZW system, it's the egg that determines the sex of the offspring, because the egg can have either a Z or a W chromosome, whereas the sperm can only have a Z chromosome. And then another system of sex determination is just the number of chromosomes an organism has. So like in bees, males only have 16 chromosomes and females have 32. They don't have any specific sex chromosomes. It's just the number of chromosomes they have. Now, it's important to note that some organisms actually will produce both eggs and sperm, so there's no real sex determination there. And also some organisms can change sex from one to the other depending on environmental conditions or other things that happen. Clownfish are a common example for organisms that will actually change sex at some point in their life, and organisms that produce both eggs and sperm are things like snails. We're not going to get in depth in any of this stuff right now. It's just important to note that. And then things like the fruit flies we've been talking about, while they are on the X and Y determination system, it is important to note that if you do get into upper level biology or genetics, they're not as simple as an X and a Y, because they can have multiple copies of the sex chromosomes, because life is messy and we don't understand everything. So we know that the sex chromosomes determine the sex of the offspring and what gametes they produce, but what about the genes on those chromosomes and the inheritance patterns we see with them? Sex chromosomes are still chromosomes, so they still carry genes. And a gene carried on a sex chromosome is known as a sex-linked gene. In humans, most of the sex-linked genes are going to be X-linked genes because they're carried on the sex chromosome. So if a gene is on a sex chromosome, it's a sex-linked gene. If the gene is carried on the X chromosome, it's an X-linked gene. And again, in humans, most of our sex-linked genes are going to be on that X chromosome because our X chromosomes are much larger than the Y chromosome, so there's much more room for more genetic information to be stored on that X chromosome. That's just kind of how it is. It's got the space, so that's where we're going to see the genes. So now that we've discussed the humans having mostly X-linked genes, let's ignore humans for a little bit and talk about fruit flies again. Fruit flies also have that XY sex determination system where the female has two X-linked genes and, the female has two X chromosomes and the male has an X and a Y chromosome. But the interesting thing that we're going to look at today is fruit fly eye color. The gene for eye color in fruit flies is carried on that X chromosome, so it's an X-linked gene. And the conditions that we're going to be looking at today are the dominant red eye color and the recessive white eye color that we can see in the image on this slide. Now, again, the red color is dominant, so a female to have the red eye color has to have at least one copy of that dominant gene, meaning they can either have the heterozygous condition where they have one dominant allele and one recessive allele, or they can be the homozygous dominant with both alleles for that red eye color in order to get the red eye color expression. Remember, males only have one X chromosome, so in order to have the red eye color, there's only one way for them to have that, and that's just that they have the dominant allele on their X chromosome. And so the white eye color is the recessive gene. In order for a female to have that white eye color, which is quite rare, they have to have that recessive allele on both of their X chromosomes. And again, the male, he's only got one X chromosome, so if he has the recessive white eye color allele on that chromosome, there's no other X chromosome to cover it up, so he just needs that one allele. And if we look at the possible inheritance patterns for the eye color, we can see the condition where we can actually get a female with that white eye color and see why it's so rare. So in the first example here, we have the homozygous dominant female and the recessive male. Notice we're not using heterozygous or homozygous when we're talking about the male because there's no other X chromosome. He can not be homozygous, he cannot be heterozygous because he only has one copy of the allele. So in this specific mating, the female can only pass on the dominant trait and the male can only pass on either the recessive trait or the Y chromosome. So the only offspring we're going to see are females with red eyes and males with red eyes. In the middle case here, we have the heterozygous female. So she has one allele for the red color, one allele for the white color, but she has red eyes because red is dominant. And we see the male with the red eye color. So in this case, the possible offspring are going to be both females with red eyes. However, one possibility is that she ends up being the homozygous dominant because the only eye color allele the male in this case can pass on is that dominant allele because he's only got one X chromosome and that X chromosome has the dominant allele. Or the female can also be heterozygous. In that case, she has the red eyes because it is the dominant trait. However, if we look at the other half of this Punnett square, there are two possibilities for the males. Either they have red eyes because the parental female can pass on that dominant allele, or they can have white eyes because the parental female can pass on the recessive allele as well in this case. And again, the males have one X chromosome, so there's no second X chromosome with another allele on it to cover it up. And so that brings us to the last possibility, is that we mate a heterozygous female with that recessive white-eyed male. Now, in this case, the possible offspring are either a female that ends up being heterozygous with red eyes, a male with red eyes, a homozygous recessive female that will have the white eyes, and this is the only possible way to get that white-eyed fruit fly female, or the male with white eyes. And this is just one demonstration of why this particular gene in this particular phenotypic expression is so rare in females. And something similar can happen with humans as well with our X-linked genes. But if we're going to be talking about humans specifically, let's move on to the human sex-linked disorders, because this is more what we're going to talk about in human cases. We're not going to get very in-depth in this, but most human sex-linked disorders are going to be recessive X-linked. Again, X chromosomes just carry more genetic information, and if it is on the Y chromosome and it is something that's deadly, in general, it's not going to make it very far. So in this particular case, we'll see that women are often carriers of the sex-linked disorders because, again, women have two X chromosomes. They can have that recessive condition and not express it if it's going to be covered up by the dominant allele because they have two X chromosomes. So in this case, men with the traits will have the disorder because they only have the one X chromosome. They don't have a second X chromosome to cover up that recessive allele and stop it from being expressed. So the example of this that you're often going to see in textbooks is hemophilia, which is basically the disorder with the excessive bleeding and all of that stuff. And the most common example of this, the most famous example, is in the Russian royal family. We know that they had that little boy that had hemophilia, and if you look back on this pedigree that we have, since the little boy had hemophilia, we can basically figure out that it had to be carried to him by his mother because his father, Tsar Nicholas II, did not express the hemophilia trait because it's an X-linked disorder. His father could not have had that particular allele. His mother had to have been a carrier for it. We're not going to get more in depth than that. And so we've talked a lot about the X chromosomes and how great they are, but what about Y chromosomes? If they're kind of little and they don't carry much genetic information, do they matter? Well, note that the Y chromosome is passed on from father to son. So the DNA can actually be used to trace male lineages, which is how we've come up with the fun little factoids that you see everywhere. 8% of males living in Central Asia can be traced back to Genghis Khan. Then another little factoid, nearly 10% of Irish men can be traced back to Niall of the 9 Hostages, who was a 5th century warlord. So they can do fun little things like that. They can be used to trace lineages. And because the DNA on Y chromosomes can be used to trace humans pretty far back, the Y chromosome is often used to study human evolution. And it's just one of those things that while it may not seem important, especially when we're looking at all the genes that can be carried on the X chromosome and these recessive disorders, the Y chromosome is still important. Not only does it determine the gametes that you produce, it's used to study human evolution and trace human lineages back through that paternal linkage. So that's all we really have today. We've kind of wrapped up chapter 9. The last couple of videos may have been a little overwhelming because They do touch on more advanced biology topics than I've really seen talked about in intro level classes, but they are kind of neat. They are in this book, and you might at least see them in a very topical sense in an intro level bio class, and at least being introduced to them now. If you are going to take upper division courses, you've at least already been introduced to these topics. Again, the fruit fly thing goes a lot more in depth than we've talked about in these last two videos. And if you do take a genetics specific course, you will go much more in depth in them, and most of a couple of chapters will just be talking about fruit flies. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning, day, afternoon, evening, what have you, and I will see you all in the next one.
Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane V. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.